Well, I provided some handouts for you and I emailed some stuff to the others online. And what this is this is a prayer that was given, or I should say that was suggested to John Edmonds and George Dexter in their book Spiritualism. Now, this book is about those teachings that were given to them through circles. Did you get a sheet?
Yes, yes. Right.
Good, okay.
Yes.
And the prayer that they had suggested goes, we'll read the whole thing and then we'll look at it a little bit at a time. Our Father God, teach us our law. Teach us to know ourselves and you. Teach us that our nature began here, will exist and progress through eternity. Teach us that your law, based on love, requires but the exercise of that love for its fulfillment. Aid us in our efforts to feel, to know what is our strength, and teach us to love one another as we are all from one source and you. Now, I suspect this was given by Emanuel Swedenborg because it's reminiscent of his writings. So, what are your thoughts about this? And Sandy, would you like to share some of your thoughts?
Well, it's really nice. And it's really specific. But it seems to encapsulate a lot in that brief specificness. I guess aid us in our efforts to feel, to know what is our strength. I think that's that's very important. And of course, teach us to love one another as we are all from one source in you. And that's probably the biggest message of all, because that's the basis of everything. But the hardest to do, I think, for some people. Yeah, I think it's interesting the way they say, teach us our law, not teach us your law. And I'm curious as to exactly what that means. I mean, I guess teach us to know ourselves and you, but I would like even more elaboration on what they mean by that. So I guess that's my initial observances.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Beth, how about you? What are your thoughts?
That Sandy said them all. Good job, Sandy. So I'm just sitting here nodding my head. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. That too, that too.
Okay,
I think one thing that one word she didn't say that came into my head was, this is sweet. It's just very sweet and kind.
very good.
Other than that, what's in?
Other than that, what Sandy said. All right. I'll ask one more person here. And Connie, what are your thoughts?
To me, it means, because it's very personal to each person that hears it. But to me, it's reminding me where I came from and giving me some signposts of where I should be going.
Excellent. I like that. I don't think I would have come up with that. So, this begins with teach us our law. Not teach us God's law, because when we hear God's law, the first thing that probably comes to mind are the 10 Commandments. You will not do this. And as Beth said, sweet. I think it was Beth. And this is not like that. We're asking him to teach us our law. Teach us what we already know. Because, psychology, I think it was Watson that held the opinion that when we're born, we come in with a clean slate. Our brain is just blank. And he tested his theory. And his theory was flawed. Because we come into this world with knowledge. We don't necessarily forget everything, but as we're in the womb, nice, comfortable, all folded up and floating around and stretching every so often, we're being taught. We're being taught in the womb what our parents think, what the people they associate with think, even their parents if they come around. We're soaking that up. And as we soak that up, our brain is very tiny. It's very tiny. It's not really formed. I don't even think the cortex has formed yet. I think that's one of the last things to form. And the cortex, by the way, is that grapefruit part of the brain. It's everything else. Everything else, because you've got the reptilian brain, which is the brainstem, that's the first thing. And then the mammalian brain, that's where we get this whole need and desire to care. Those, 1, 2, and then the grapefruit on top. The cortex is our memory and everything. That's where our memories are at. But, as we're learning all this other stuff from our parents in the womb, all this information, all this knowledge we brought with us is kind of pushed out. And it has to happen. One of the things that psychologists have discovered in their research is the need for forgetting. So if we could target what we forget, we may have room for what we want to remember. But typically, what we don't remember, what we forget, is all that mundane stuff. Can anybody remember something mundane? When was the last time you were bored? That's a challenge. So yes, teach us our law. Teach us what we already know. Remind us what we already know. Some of us believe that we come into this world with an agenda. That when we were a soul, before we agreed to come in here, we made this little list of things that we were supposed to accomplish. If that's what you subscribe to, is that what you believe? All right then, that's what this is referring to. Help you remember that. Okay, what's my purpose here? I know I came here because I don't do anything without a purpose. What was that again? Teach us our law. And I don't like the term law, because law makes it sound like it's concrete. This is it. So I prefer the term principles. Because principles, well, there's some flexibility in there. Just the word sounds flexible. Well, if I don't like this principle, it might be this principle, but it could be this principle. When we look at the principles of nature, all it is one law broken up into little bitty slices so we can figure it out for ourselves. And that's what science does when they investigate. They cut off a little bitty slice of this so they can understand it because, oh man. Can anybody step out into the world and understand it? But if we go into a cafe and we talk to a few people, well, we can figure things out then. That's why science focuses on little bitty pieces at a time, and then it's up to everybody else to put it all together. So yes, teach us our law, and it's followed up by teach us to know ourselves and you. And where does God dwell? Anybody?
Yes.
In us, yes. God dwells in us. So if we are asking for God to teach us about ourselves, well, as we learn about ourselves, we learn about God. And if we don't like ourselves, chances are pretty good we're not going to like God either. And then that's an altogether different talk. So what are your thoughts about that? Just that little bit, Sharon?
I wasn't thinking about it so much.
Well, does any of it make sense?
Oh, it does. You mean the part about,
Just what we talked about.
okay. Um. Oh, yeah, stand still here.
No, hey, that's fine. If nothing comes to mind, don't worry about it.
All right, yeah, sorry.
That's
But I'll
good.
fight then if somebody says something.
Nothing to apologize for. Just say, well, I'm absorbing that,
I am.
and I'll let you go with it.
Thank you.
I won't pick on you.
Oh.
She's turning it over to Ken.
Uh-oh.
Huh?
I didn't know that. She did. She's taking over. She's prepping for later today.
She was right. She's always right on. Step ahead.
So did you have any thoughts? Just on that little bit that we discussed, just that little bit here.
Well, the word "our" comes up many times. Our Father, our law, ourselves, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
Our nature.
Yes.
I had this incident, everybody's heard about this, I can make it real quick. I had some emotion, let's say that. And it was so profound that I kept saying, I was walking around saying to myself, where did this come from? And it continued for 2 months. Where did this come from? So I've been trying, did it come from God? Did it come from spirit? Did it come from my spirit counsel in the ether? And I think it dawned on me yesterday, it could not have come from me, but it could have come from me. Because we all have access to God. Could very well have come from me, self-generated. I'm trying not to say ego, but it's sort of like that. But I said, well, I can't be that because ego is pretty base and, but anyhow, it really could have come from me because of my contacts with, I just said a God, spirit, whatever. I'm as capable as anybody. I'm as capable as anybody else is of channeling. And we're all mediums, but we don't know. We get the messages, but we don't realize it. It bounces off our arm. Okay, that's what it is. It bounces off our arm. And we don't even know it. But we are all getting messages all the time. That's how they do.
You did good.
Very
You did
good.
great.
Thank you.
And when you said you wanted to say ego, you would have been very much correct. Because what everybody else teaches about ego outside of psychology have it all wrong. Because it's the ego that got you here today. It's the
I'm
ego.
getting chills over that because, I found a book in the used bookstore and I took it home and it's got everything laid out. The man's name is Ken Wilber. He's a spiritual writer. And synopsis of what he believes. And where am I going? I had it right there. Oh, ego. He said, this is not right to destroy ego. You take your small little ego and you plug it into the infinite eternal cosmos. That's where you play. That's what you do. You do yourself through plugging into the cosmos with your little ego.
Wow.
Absolutely right. Kudos. Kudos. So let's look at this another part here. Teach us that our nature began here, will exist and progress through eternity. Our nature, our essence began here. The question is, where is here? Any thoughts you might like to add, Jerry? Where is here? If you don't want to, that's fine.
Here is a momentary position of where our brain thinks we are, but that doesn't mean our spirit or our soul is in the exact same spot. Something abstract. What else is new? Okay.
Well, abstract is what is the type of thinking that's required here. Our nature began here, will exist and progress through eternity. Clue word, eternity.
Here is
Nature and-
everywhere.
Yeah. Go ahead, Sharon.
I was gonna say, does nature imply our soul? I mean.
It could
our
be.
Nature began here, does that imply our spiritual self? But.
Stick with soul. You had it right with
Okay,
soul.
okay, and then because of the word eternity, it just kind of seemed like those two. That would go together. So.
So you're on the right track. You're on the right path there.
I kind of wonder if here is awareness. That's what kind of came into my head. Well, what is here? Here, I have to be aware to be here.
Exactly. Good. Good. Here's everywhere. One of the things that the souls brought through their teachings that I have read in the different books that I'm gathering together was that the soul realm and what we call the physical realm are natural. They're different aspects of nature. They're both here. Doesn't mean that what exists here also exists here, because that's not what's implied here. What's implied here is that what is here is reflected here, and what is here is reflected there, which can be very confusing. So let me put it to you another way. One of the ways that they describe transitioning from this realm into the next, and Andrew Jackson Davis put it nicely. He said it's like boarding a boat, a ship, booking passage, sailing across the ocean, and disembarking from the ship.
And
Well, that's here. Here is where you are always at. Like Connie said, here is everywhere. Like you said, here is where your awareness is at. Like Sharon said, here is our nature is soul. So here is here. And like Jerry said, very abstract.
Unless you believe in different dimensions, then here is there.
Exactly. You believe in different dimensions, here is there. So while I'm here, I'm over here, and I'm talking to me over here, and it's a wonderful conversation talking to myself here and here, talking to God here and here, and we can really, really can boggle the brain, but we're not going to do that. Teach us that your law, based on love, requires but the exercise of that love for its fulfillment. Teach us that your law is based on love. So now we have to think about, okay, what is love? Talk about an abstract idea. Something that is so esoteric that we shy away from it. And we talked about this at another lesson. Would you like to take a stab at this, Sandy?
Well, I'm sitting here contemplating that, and I don't think, I mean, it's not the love of parent, child, spouse, that it's a universal, I think it's a more universal truth that, I think it's a love. I'm just trying to find the words. It's a love that transcends people. And that's probably not the right word, but I guess what I feel like is that it's the love that says everyone is different, but everyone is embraced by the same love, and that embracing transcends any kind of judgment or difference, or it's beyond all of that, and it's a pure it's a pure love. I don't even know if humanity even sounds limiting, but it's a love that says you are free to be you and I am free to be me, and I do not judge you and you do not judge me, because I know you're on your path and I'm on mine, and we're going in this together. We're going in the same direction. I guess that's just kind of how I feel about it. It's just very transcendent, beyond probably a lot of what we even understand on this level, on this plane. I don't know.
Oh, you do know. You do know. The most important thing about all our discussions is that everything makes sense to you. That's the most important thing about all these discussions. And the reason why we have these discussions is because, well, like engineering, it all looks good on paper until you put it into practice. It all sounds good in your head until you give it voice. When you give it voice, then it's like, I said that? Wow, that does make sense. So that's the most important thing, Sandy, that it makes sense to you. And everything, well, it made sense to me. Did it make sense to everybody else? Everybody's nodding. So with that, what are your thoughts, Beth?
Oh, what popped into my head was goodwill. If you can't understand the term love, or if love means so many different things, how about just goodwill?
Mhm.
And of course, your nurturance and kindness and, but
Mhm.
I use the term nurturing for love because nurturing is something that cannot be misinterpreted unless you really go out on a limb. Nurturing is always going to encourage progress. It's always going to do that. And here is the one part here. Exercise that love for its fulfillment. Now, this suggests that love is a verb. It's not just a word that we write at the end of a note or a letter because, well, it's automatic, it's expected, it just sounds good, it gets us in a good place, it gets us where, it's more than that. That's what is being suggested. This is why I said it sounded like Swedenborg, because that's exactly what Swedenborg wrote in many of his books. Exercise love. In other words, do instead of just talk. And let's drop down to aid us in our efforts to feel, to know what is our strength, and to teach us to love one another, as we are all from one source and you. What are your thoughts about that, Sharon?
Well, efforts to feel, I mean, I guess that really covers a lot of emotions,
Right,
all kinds of emotions.
right.
And then to learn, where we shine. And of course, wherever that is, go with that. So whatever that strength is, go with that strength. Hopefully that strength, part of that strength is loving one another,
At least leads us to that.
Exactly. Because we are all from one source and you, not as we are, but because we are. Anyway.
Good.
Right.
I like that you picked up feel with emotions. Because emotions are important. Emotions are what we speak with. You go to any country, I don't care if you know the language or not, if you can interpret the emotion behind the words being spoken, you can figure out what it is that they're trying to say to you. And I've done it more than one occasion. Somebody who has problems speaking, if you can connect with that emotion will form a picture. And from that picture, we will figure out just how much intelligence is behind it, because emotion and intelligence go hand in hand. If we separate one from the other, we are going to have problems. It's just the natural way. What are your thoughts, Cindy?
Well, I just think that our words are lost here on each other because there's so many wars going on right now. Just, we're not the people that need to hear all this stuff.
Yeah, we are not the people that need to hear all this stuff, but we are the people that need to understand this stuff so that we can speak this stuff so that they can hear it. And one thing we have to keep in mind, it does not make a difference what belief system they follow. It does not make a difference what religion they subscribe to. It does not make a difference with any of that. As long as they understand that love is going to allow us to progress. And as long as we see love in whatever form we choose to put it in, as long as that form is nurturing, encouraging, inspiring, we are making a difference. All we have to do is do and project, because there's this field of information here that we tap into when we meditate. And meditation is not just sitting in our chair listening to some nice soothing music and going within. Meditation is focus. Anybody who is focused, I'll share a story I read in Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. Whenever this particular person needed money, they would set up a table, paper, pencil, maybe a glass of water in this room. They would close the door to the room, and they would not leave the room until they had written down at least 3 ideas. So it doesn't make a difference how you focus. You have access to this information. These people that started these events that we call wars, they were tapping into this energy too. But they applied this energy in a fashion, this information here that they drew into them, they applied it in a fashion that brought harm to other people. However, and this is what's ironic about all of this, that harm that they brought to these other people encouraged these other people to either get out of there or to find a way to work with it or something else. In either case, what this person did to serve themselves helped this other person adapt, progress. Yeah, these wars that are going on, they're horrific. But imagine what they're going to teach all these other people who would have followed in those footsteps. They're going to teach them to be kinder, to be gentler, to be more nurturing. Yes, hopefully, yes. So, yeah, we need all this stuff. Of course, I'm with you. We don't need it in such a pronounced fashion. So, any thoughts as we wrap this up? And I will start with Connie. Do you have any thoughts you'd like to add?
Just, follow your own path, but at the same time, don't push others off of theirs.
Well put. Well put. Would you like to offer some last thoughts, Sharon?
I like what Connie said.
Me too.
I don't really have anything to add to that, but I really like that. That's good.
Yeah, we're all on our own path.
Yes.
Would you like to offer any last thoughts, Jerry?
Well, sometimes I like to take the other point of view and say that sometimes there needs to be justice. There are some people that need to be stopped. Even though I like to live in peace, I still end up getting stuff about people that I don't necessarily like. So I do try to bless those that I know that are going off on the wrong path, and send them some healing, send them some light. But then there's other times when then the police just have to get involved, and that's just the way it is. I'll leave that with you. God bless.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. I don't think I've read in any of these spiritual books or anything else where we have to be, and I think the term that is used most often is we don't have to be doormats. So you don't have to take it. But they do recommend that you be mindful of the fashion in which you choose to retaliate. So, any thoughts you might like to share, Cindy?
Oh, yeah, we have to, retaliate in such a way that it gives them room to correct themselves.
Very good. So there is a way to be nurturing while retaliate. That sounds a little strong, but I can't think of anything else that I could use in there that would convey the same idea.
I was thinking of, Hitler and the resistance. That's what came to mind. Look at what the resistance did.
What resistance?
The World War II, the resistance against Hitler.
Exactly. Mhm.
That's a good way of putting it, the resistance. So do you have any last thoughts?
I just gave them.
Oh,
Thank
you
you
just
very
gave
much.
them. Okay.
To do.
All right, so, well, would you like to offer some thoughts, Ken?
Sure, but we don't have time.
Oh, that's fine, give us a condensed version.
We've talked about, touched on it before, that why females make better mediums than males do. You're talking about nurturing. Well, women are better nurturers, sorry, that's the way it is. Guy can go out and shoot things and bring them back and feed the family. The women do the nurturing. Okay, but we all came from the same place, and if you wanna read this again, read it again. We all came from our original self, and we are all going back to the original self. That's part of the path, that's the trip. You thought I was asleep that one time, you thought you were gonna wake me up, but I was thinking about. Don't say it. They'll be on to you if you say it. I'll go ahead and say it. The relationship between Jesus and the prostitute, Mary. Which I think we all know now, she was not a prostitute probably, but what if she was? There's a lesson there. There's a big lesson there. And it's sort of a genderless society. And it's going on right now as we speak in, here it goes, Taiwan. Taiwan being probably, I read this somewhere and I was not sure about it, is the most democratic entity. It's not even a nation because they're stuck between them and China. But where was I going? I've been watching some YouTube videos and I was amazed, but it is probably the most democratic entity on the earth now. And they're not gonna let go. They are not gonna be taken over by China. Young people are doing a lot of this and everything's out on the table. They elected a female president. They've got a transgender prime minister. They've got a blah, blah. They're mixing everything up. They're going back to the original self, we're all one. And it's right there.
Exactly. Exactly. And, you know, where was it that Jesus hung out at?
Mhm.
He didn't hang out in the synagogues or didn't hang out with the rabbis.
Mhm.
He hung out with the prostitutes, the boozers, the people who had a good time. You could say it's because that's where he was needed. You could also say that it was good boredom relief. There's a lot of things you could say about it, but it's recorded in there. That's where he was at. That's where he liked to go.
It's the sick that need the doctor.
Okay, the sick that need the doctor. So I'm going to leave you with this. Our Father, God, teach us law. Teach us to know ourselves and you. Teach us that our nature began here, will exist and progress through eternity. Teach us that your law, based on love, requires but the exercise of that love for its fulfillment. Aid us in our efforts to feel, to know what is our strength, and teach us to love one another as we are all from one source, you. And I want to thank all of you for offering your thoughts, for your participation, and thank you for allowing me to share this.